Hey guys, so I've got a new video for you today and it's going to be something a little bit different, but it's something that I thought would be worth doing a video on. I saw that they have a new makeup brand coming out at Superdrug and it's been out now for around 3 or 4 weeks, I'm not too sure, but they had these palettes which were £4 each and they have quite a few colours. I actually bought 6 palettes, but 3 of them are kind of direct dupes for the Naked palettes, and because I have all 3 of the Naked palettes as well, I thought I would do a comparison for you guys because the Naked palettes are around £36 each in the UK. I'm pretty sure they're around £36, which is a big investment if you don't know if you're going to be using all the colours, and especially for like a beginner it's quite a lot of money just to spend on some eyeshadow. I'm going to be swatching them, reviewing them, and I actually have them on my eyes today. I've worn this look for the last 2 days, yesterday with primer, today with no primer, just to see how well they last, and you really cannot tell a difference. So I'll quickly just zoom in and show you guys and then I'll tell you which one is which. So these are both my eyes, and as you can tell the colours are literally exactly the same, and one of them is completely from the Naked 3 palette and one of them is completely from this Iconic 3 palette. I don't know if you guys can tell any difference because I certainly can't, but I will tell you now that this eye is the Urban Decay Naked 3 palette and this eye is the Makeup Revolution Iconic 3 palette. So without talking about them for too long, I'm going to start with the original Naked palette and the Iconic one. So this is what the palette looks like. This is the Iconic one. So as you can see, the colours are exact replicas. So I'm going to go ahead and swatch the Naked one palette versus this Iconic one palette. I'm going to do the Naked palette on the top and the Iconic palette on the bottom, and I'll show you guys, I'll tell you about the pigmentation and things like that. Okay, so I've just swatched them all along my arm and I'm at a kind of like awkward angle, so I'm just going to show you guys up close and read through the names of the colours from the Naked palette, and then you can see in comparison what they're like. So up here is the colour Virgin by the Naked palette, and down here is the dupe for it by the Iconic palette, and I have to say the one by the Iconic palette is slightly lighter and a bit more pinky than the one from the Naked palette. The next one along is the colour Sin, and these do look quite similar, although I would say the Naked palette has slightly better pigmentation for this colour. The next one is the colour Naked, and I do have to say the Naked at the top is a slightly more brown colour, but this one has got a slight taupe look to it. It's a bit more like a mauvey brown rather than just like a solid brown like this one up here. And then the next colour along is Sidecar, which are these two, and these two are quite comparable. I have to say they are very similar, so that's these two here. And then the next colour along is Book, and again this bottom one here by the Iconic palette does have a slight more kind of mauvey or mauvey taupey colour than the top. Next to Book are these two golden colours which are Half Baked. Half Baked is at the top, and what I do have to say is Half Baked at the top is slightly more coppery than the one at the bottom by the Iconic palette. And Smog, I have to say, they do look very, very similar. I wouldn't really notice much of a difference, apart from Smog in the Naked palette is maybe a tiny bit darker than from the Iconic palette. And then along here is Dark Horse, and these two colours literally are practically the same. The one that's very similar is the next one along here, which is Toasted, and as you can see they're practically the same colour as well. Of course, the next one along is Creep, which is the black colour with a slight shimmer in it, and this is the bottom one, that's the top one. And what I do have to say is the one at the bottom from the Iconic palette is slightly more black than from the Naked palette. At the end is Gunmetal, and these two colours again, as you can see, are pretty much similar. They've got a right amount of shimmer in. Maybe the shimmer in the Iconic palette is a bit more finely milled, because as you can see it's a bit more glittery in the original Naked palette. So this is just an overview. I'm sorry if you can't see because I kind of swatched in a weird position. This is just an overview of all of the colours, and I will go through them slowly so you can see the differences, but I wouldn't say there is any main significant difference. As you can see, they all look pretty much like the ones from the Naked palette. So I don't want this video to be too long, so I'm just going to move on to the next palette, which is obviously the Naked 2 palette. So this is a direct comparison of the two palettes, and again you can see the colours are pretty much the same. So the first colour at the top here is Foxy, which is kind of a yellowish tone white, or just like an off-white colour, and obviously you can see here it blends in quite well to my skin because my skin tone is kind of yellowy. But here at the bottom, the one by the Iconic palette is more like the colour Strange from the Naked 3 palette, because it has got still more like a pinky tone to it. And then we're going on to Half Baked again, which is one from the Naked palette also. And like I said before, the colours are slightly different here because obviously the one at the top is a lot more pigmented because my Naked 2 palette is more recently bought than my original Naked palette. So this one is obviously like a more warm toned gold, kind of coppery. But the one at the bottom here, it's not as yellowy as in the original Iconic palette, the Iconic one. This one's a bit more like a browny gold for some reason. It's not the exact same colour, I would say. Booty Call, which is this third one along here, and these two are pretty comparable. I wouldn't say there's a huge difference in these two. Going on to Chopper, which again I think are pretty similar colours. Moving on to the colour Tease, I'd say these are quite similar, apart from the one in the Naked 2 palette is more of a brown when it comes off, but the one at the bottom is more of a mauvey colour, a bit more purpley, snake bite, and these two are very, very similar. I would just say the one at the bottom from the Iconic palette does have a bit more shimmer in it than the one from the Naked palette. And then next to that is the colour Suspect, which is this one here. And these two are quite similar. I would say the colour from the Iconic palette is slightly darker than the one from the Naked 2 palette, Pistol, which is at the top. And these two again are quite similar, but I would say there is more shimmer in the one in the Iconic 2 palette. I would say this is quite an accurate dupe, but both of them are pretty much the same colour and the pigmentation was the same also. Then we're moving on to the colour YDK, and I will have to say I do prefer the one by the Urban Decay Naked 2 palette, purely because YDK has bigger chunks of glitter in it, as you can see here, and it's just supposed to be a chunkier colour, and here it's more just a typical shimmer with finely milled glitter. One along is Busted, and this colour is pretty much the same also, but looking up close I would say there is more shimmer again in the Iconic 2 palette. Colour Blackout, which is the black colour at the end. So this is from the Naked 2 palette and this is the Iconic 2 palette, and I did have to swatch this one a lot more than the Naked 2 palette, and it still hasn't come up with the same blackness, because I would say this is more of a, it's not as pigmented, so you have to put a lot more colour on because it doesn't come out as black as the Naked 2 palette. This is an overview of all of the colours, and I would say they're like the Naked 1 palette. They're quite similar, but there are some slight changes. Okay, so we're finally going to move on to the Urban Decay Naked 3 palette. There you go, there's a comparison of the two. Okay, so we're on to the final palette. This one is the colour Strange by the Naked 3 palette, and these down here are by the Iconic 3 by Makeup Revolution. And I have to say the only difference here, the colour is pretty similar, but the Naked 3 one had a better pigmentation than the Iconic 3. Dust, and these colours are pretty similar. I'd say the pigmentation also is quite similar, as you can see. Next colour is Burnout, and this one I would have to say that the one at the bottom has a cooler toned pink than the one from the Naked 3 palette, and that goes to the next colour, which is Limit also. I think they replicated the colour very well, and as you can see it looks very, very similar. It's like a light kind of purpley pink colour. The next colour along is Buzz, and this one I have to say I'm quite impressed with also. There was only a very, very, very slight colour difference, but nothing that you would notice. Then moving on to the colour Trick, I would say they've got this one right as well, because it's quite a coppery gold colour. It's not just like a pure gold, and it's replicated that as well. It's the same with the colour Nuna, because these are also very similar. As you can see, it's got that kind of like mauvey purple look to it. And then moving on to the colour Limit, I would say these are similar, apart from the fact that the Naked 3 one had a bit more of a creamy consistency than the one from the Iconic 3. And then we're moving on to the colour Factory, and these are also quite similar. I think they've both got the right kind of pinky undertone. And then we're moving on to Mugshot, which is this one here, and Mugshot again is quite similar. I think they've got the right amount of shimmer, because this Naked 3 palette is a bit more shimmery rather than chunky glitter like some of the Naked 2 ones are. And I have to say the one I'm most impressed with was Dark Horse, because as you can see it's not just a grey, it's kind of got like a pink around the outside, so if you blended it out it would look a bit pink, and they've managed to replicate that really well. And it was also the creamiest colour in the palette from the Iconic 3. As you can see, Black Heart at the end at the top, it's got very big chunks of glitter, and I hope that the sun is kind of like picking this up. It's black with very big chunks of kind of like a coppery glitter, and the one at the bottom does have a copper glitter, but it's more like a kind of shimmer again. They don't have the same pigmentation as the one from the Naked 3 palette. I would say that the Naked 3 palette has got more of a variation in more like textures because they have the big glitters and the small glitters. I have to say also, I think they apply better with a brush than with your finger. Naked palettes have a lot more of a creamy consistency. So I'm just going to go through my final thoughts on these palettes. I'm very impressed with all of the colour choices that they've come out with. They do have other palettes as well, but these ones are kind of like direct dupes for the Naked palette. I definitely recommend picking them up if you guys like some of the colours. The pigmentation is very, very good. I wouldn't say the texture is entirely the same. The texture I prefer personally from the Naked palettes because the quality is there and they just feel a lot smoother and creamier to put on, especially from my Naked 3 palette because that one's my newest one. Aside from that, if you're really just in the market to get the colours and you really want the Naked palettes but you don't want to have to pay for them or pay that much for them, I definitely recommend trying out these ones because you do get a lot of product in them as well, because obviously these are quite big. The only downside is you don't get a mirror like you do with the Naked palettes, but obviously if you've got them at home it's easy just to use your other mirror. They're quite easy to carry around, they're compact, they're quite thin and lightweight. So my overall view is, yes, these are definitely dupes for the Naked palettes. They retail for £4 each at Superdrug. I'm not too sure if they're available in the US or Canada or anything like that, but if you guys are interested in me doing a giveaway with some of these palettes, I definitely will do. Because these have just come out, I thought I would quickly do a video to show you guys the swatches. If you've got any questions about any of the palettes, then leave them down below and I'll be sure to answer them, but I'm pretty sure I've covered everything. Very impressed with these. If you guys get these, then let me know in the comments or post me a picture on Instagram or something. I don't want to talk too much. I've probably made this like a really, really long video. So I love you guys. I will see you in my next video and I hope you enjoyed this video. So please subscribe for more videos and leave me any suggestions down below if you want me to do any more of these kind of like dupe comparisons. So I will see you guys later and I hope you're having an amazing day. Bye! Scrolling on the Dale versus these, this is the Urban Decay Naked 3 palette, the Urban Decay Naked 3 palette. I think the one in the Naked palette is just, I would say, the colour was, so I'm just going to tell